Are you a self-storage owner or operator looking for service providers to help at your facility? Well, the Storage Business Owners Alliance, also known as the SBOA, has you covered. The SBOA is a premier online hub for connecting self-storage owners and operators to industry-leading products and service providers. We provide one-stop shopping for your business with exclusive offers to save time and money. At the SBOA, we believe by coming together, we help owners and operators grow revenue, gain purchasing power, reduce expenses, improve efficiencies, and increase profitability. We also offer many resources such as our conferences and self-storage unlock webinars to help self-storage owners and operators gain the knowledge needed to become more competitive in the industry. To become an SBOA member or to find out more information, please visit www.thesboa.com today. We can't wait for you to join the Alliance.
Hello, self-storage industry. Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks since we've had a self-storage unlocked episode. It's summertime, so we had a little bit of a break there for some summer vacations, but we are back and in action for our Q3 self-storage unlocked schedule. This is the first one for Q3. Today, we are talking all about energy efficiency deductions for self-storage. There's a new deduction that is advantageous to you as a self-storage owner that CSSI is here today with us to talk all about and educate you on. So I hope that you find this information valuable and you're able to take this back and implement this at your facilities. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jessica Johnson. I'm the president of the SBOA, and we love putting on these webinars for you. We usually do 2, sometimes 3 a month. They're always on Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please check our schedule in our weekly newsletter that comes out every Tuesday to your inbox. All of the Q3 topics have been listed and they are out there for you to view. So please go check that out and register for the upcoming ones that we have outside of today. And a huge shout out to CSSI for taking this on with us and putting this together and bringing this to you. Without our partners out there, we wouldn't be able to do webinars like this and bring more education to the self-storage industry. I see some of you are already chatting in the comment section. That is where you will ask us questions. So if you do have questions as we go through today's presentation, don't wait till the end. Ask them as you have them, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. If for any reason we can't get to your question in time, we will gladly email you after today's event with the response to your question. One good thing about Self-Storage Unlocked is completely free webinars for you and your team. And we record these. So for any reason you missed today's live event or you have to step away for any reason, you can always go out to the SBOA YouTube channel. Or if you're one of our enhanced members, you can just log into your member portal and watch the webinar replay from there. And we'll give you some more information about enhanced membership at the conclusion of today's webinar. So I want to get this kicked off. I'm going to bring up my first speaker that we have today, Brian Broussard from CSSI. Good morning, Brian.
Morning.
Brian, give us a little background about you and what you do over at CSSI.
So my background is actually prior to tax, I went to school for architecture and graduated with a degree in architecture and started taking my exams to get licensed. And this was about the late 2000s. And economy went south and forced a career change. So I took my background in architecture and got into tax consulting, specifically 179D, and been doing that for about 14 years.
Awesome. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the 179D specific one, but there are other tax deductions that owners can have available to them. And I'm sure you'll mention that in today's presentation. So thanks for being here with us today, Brian. Up next, I have another Brian from their team. Brian Lyles is with us. Hey, Brian.
Good morning, Jessica. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a warm and sunny Thursday here in Jacksonville, Florida. So
Beautiful.
Brian, just like the other Brian did, tell us all about you.
Yeah, so Brian Lyles, I have been in the energy savings industry for over 20 years, done a lot of energy projects with every type of business, especially in the self-storage industry over the last 7 years, doing lighting conversion projects to LED, where we use a tax savings to help offset the costs. And we've been on a couple of the SBOA webinars discussing the program that we have. So very excited. 179D is another tax savings opportunity for business owners, especially the self-storage industry.
Yeah.
So excited to tell us about that.
Awesome. Thanks for mentioning that, Brian, too. As I said on our YouTube channel, you can go back several years worth of our webinar content. And I believe one that we've done previously with you guys that talks more about the cost segregation side is out there. So if anyone is interested in watching that replay after the conclusion of today's event, we'll send those links out to everybody too, so they have those. So thanks for being here with us again.
Thanks, Jessica.
You're welcome. And last but certainly not least, we have Warren from CSSI. Good morning, Warren.
Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
I'm doing well. Again, sunny Florida. Can't complain. My skin is getting tanner by the day when I actually can make it outside of this office and get some sun. So, Warren, tell us all about you and what you do at CSSI.
Good stuff. Well, I've been with CSSI and I've been in the self-storage world about 10 years. So I'm executive vice president and kind of run the sales team. One of the guys that's kind of knowledgeable in the tax law as well. And we've done cost segregation for years. Now we're excited with Brian on our team. We now offer both 179D, which is when you build a building and make it more energy efficient. It's an additional deduction that you can get from that. And then Brian also brings to the table the CSSI research and development credit. So if you're out there and you're doing software or security or anything that involves research, we might be able to help you there as well.
Very cool. Yeah, and this product line, just for anyone out there in the audience that, we're going to talk specifically today about self-storage because that's what we live, eat, and breathe over here in our world. But it does have other applications out there. Warren can probably talk to you guys about that too. So if you're in a different sector, a different business channel or line, you could probably get cost seg. I own a bar, and Warren was just telling me I can get cost seg done for my bar. I wouldn't have known that. So
absolutely.
So thanks again for being here. Let's bring everybody up, and then let's put this slideshow up that we have for you today. The CSSI team put together this nice deck of information for us. And again, we will send this out to all of the attendees so you can have kind of the nitty gritty of what we're going to talk about. But guys, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to keep my eyes peeled over on the chat to see if the audience has any questions. And if they do, I'm going to interrupt and ask those questions.
Beautiful. Sounds good.
Perfect. I like watching that too. I appreciate where everybody's from. Keep them coming and throw your questions out to us as we go along.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I see Noel, Shay, if I'm saying it right, Chad. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. So let me advance you over to the next slide. This is their contact information in case anybody needs to get in touch with them. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah.
So again, a little bit about CSSI. We are probably the premier energy-based consulting firm focusing on tax savings in the United States. We've been doing it for over 21 years. We have completed over 45,000, that still is a mind-boggling number to me, cost segregation analysis. We have never triggered an audit, which is even more interesting. But we've been brought in because of our clients have been audited on something else. We've been brought in, and every time that we've been brought in, IRS looks at our calculations, it approves them, and we go on. So it's pretty neat. We've never been, again, we've never triggered an audit. And every time we've been brought in front of them, we've been able to pass with no prejudice. Our projects range from a cost basis of $200,000 to $2.5 billion. Okay, just that 2.5 billion is a big number. And again, we offer a consulting service. We're just not a cost segregation company, a 179D or R&D company or energy services. We want to be here to help you guys understand tax law and understand ways that we can save additional money for you all.
Yeah,
So,
and to add to that as well, how we differentiate ourselves is really our knowledge of the tax law. So the definitions of repair regulations when you're in the self-storage world and you're making a repair. A lot of people don't realize that when you tear something out and throw it in the trash, there's a benefit, and we're putting something new in, there's a benefit. Most people realize if I'm making an addition or improvement that there's a benefit, a tax play on there. But oftentimes when you tear stuff out, there is as well. A lot of times we look at buildings and we see, hey, someone didn't make the right expense determination. We can go back and capture savings for you on the back end. And the pad is what I'm referring to. LED lighting is a perfect example. When you're redoing your lights in a self-storage, you tear the old ones out and you get to write off the remaining value of those lights going in the trash. And then the new ones often get bonus depreciation, so tax plays going in. But a lot of that's how we really try to differentiate ourselves, is our knowledge of the tax law, not just selling a service, but being a resource for you guys from here on out.
right.
Yeah, I can speak, towards this. We've owned 2 portfolios in our self-storage journey. We had a large one, Storage Pros Management, several years ago. We had over 100 locations. We used CSSI to do cost seg studies for us, then saved us millions, literally millions. Listen to me, owners out there. I said the word millions. We have a smaller portfolio now of about 16 stores, but I think you guys have done a cluster of those for us recently. And, now we're saving tens of thousands. It'll get back into the millions probably when we have more locations. But we are a true testimonial case out here of we've gone through this process with CSSI, and it is very beneficial. So I would highly recommend anyone on today's call that's interested, reach out to Warren and his team about this. So.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey, just one other thing on that too. We talked about the partial asset disposition or PAD for lighting, but the same applies for doors. Okay. If you're upgrading your doors, huge tax savings for the disposition of the old doors, and then for the new doors going in too. So, so there's some really good opportunities for owners out there if you're looking at doing any door upgrades to your properties.
Hey, real quick, guys, we do have a question from the audience. I'm going to just pop it up here. What about solar panels, from Andrew?
So solar panels, and I guess what about solar panels? I guess a little more clarification. Solar panels are out there, yes. Solar panels are really more regionally useful because of the amount of sunlight the areas get. And the other thing about solar panels is the programs only really work or pencil out if the utility companies are backing it or the state is backing it from a rebate perspective.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah. There are tax savings in there. Every company that does a proposal to you for solar has those tax savings already embedded in there. That's one of the reasons they're able to get the paybacks down. So
makes sense. Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks for that.
Yep. You're welcome. We go ahead and flip to the next one, Jess.
Yeah, go ahead.
179D tax deduction. It's really known as the energy efficient tax deduction. It allows companies, and the reason it got started was to help business owners try to make their buildings more energy efficient. And this government then would allow us these tax deductions to help offset the cost of doing these projects for us. Okay. Something that came up recently was normally the business owners always got the tax deduction, but with the Inflation Reduction Act, now nonprofits, Indian tribal governments, you see the list there, Native organizations can allocate, they can actually assign those tax deductions to the designer of the building. Okay, so even though they cannot use them, those tax deductions can be assigned to the designers or somebody who has a lot of architectural design work on the building. So just kind of expanded a little bit for the tax savings to other entities.
And generally speaking, when you do new construction today, it's going to be more efficient than the code requires. So you're going to qualify for 179D.
Right.
Awesome.
And we'll get into the details on that in a couple of slides back here and everything. So if you'll move on to the next one, please.
Yeah, and while we're moving on, just a quick reminder to the audience. We've asked 2 poll questions. I don't see any responses, so if you could respond, I'd appreciate it. The first poll question is, have you ever had a cost segregation study done on your property? If you could just put 1 - yes or no, that will help us get to know you better. And then the second poll question was, are you already familiar with the 179D Energy Efficiency Deduction? Again, put 2 - yes or no, so we can get to know what's going on with you guys. Go ahead, Brian.
It looks like Noel had a question on more like solar panel lights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So solar panel lights are really, over the last year and a half or so, have really come a long way. The solar panel lights in the past have always been kind of spotty, not really, robust in the amount of battery storage that they had. So they were a little bit limited on that. But now we're starting to see them almost like in a wall pack. Matter of fact, we just did a project with somebody who just built a self-storage facility. He didn't want to spend the money of pulling power and everything, so we sold him 25 solar lights that were wall pack design that his contractor just installed them. And everything I've heard so far back from him has been, it's positive. The light levels are incredible. It's eliminated dark spots, dark areas on this property that he was having an issue with before. So they've come a long way. There's all kinds of technology out there right now for solar panel lights. And so if you have questions, feel free to ask and we'll get answers for you and point you in the right direction and assist you in that. So.
Yeah, and like the lighting side's critical, right? For safety reasons, security reasons. You definitely want to make sure your lighting's in good standing, it's working, it's positioned right, and it's nice and bright.
Right. Matter of fact, I just looked at a property in Southern California where the electrical was so bad out there that they were going to have to spend almost $100,000 just to rewire the entire facility and everything. Oof. So we went back and proposed solar wall pack lights, and the cost of that project was like $75,000 with the lights and installation, versus $100,000 plus the other money he would spend on the property. So those are things that the technology has advanced so much that it was a good application for it, and it was a great value to the customer.
Definitely.
Any more questions in there? I don't think so. Okay. 179D. When did it start? It was created in 2005 with the Energy Policy Act. Okay. And again, it was designed for building owners in the commercial industry or commercial space to take advantage of tax deductions for over engineering and making their buildings more energy efficient. Okay. When we were talking about this before the webinar started, is that, having been in the lighting industry for 20 plus years, I was here when 179 first came out, and nobody understood the process and how you would get the tax credits. There's nothing that was written. It just says, okay, it's here. And people were struggling to finally, figure out a way to get it done. And now, fast forward 20 years later, the process is in place. Everybody knows about it. Companies out there like CSSI that can do the tax calculations for us. So it's easy to manage now. It's easy to understand. And that's why we're doing these webinars like this, to help people understand it even better. Okay, let's move on. Back one, please. Okay, so 179D again gets to the expensing of energy efficiencies within the building. Okay, we can go all the way back to 2006 and do a 179D study on a building. Okay, and the 179D study takes place the year the building was put in service. Okay, and from 2006 to 2022. You could get up to a maximum of $1.80 per square foot, okay, on your building. 2023, it changed and it went up. It went up to $5 per square foot. But before everybody gets all excited at $5 a square foot and starts running the numbers, there's a pretty big caveat in that. Okay? Hey, Brian, do you want to talk to him about the caveat about what the change was in 23 and going to get to the $5?
You just need to unmute Brian. I do it all the time still. We've been on Zoom now for 5 years since COVID, and I still do it. That's how I get it.
Yeah, so with the Inflation Reduction Act, basically what they did is they took the actual deduction that was done with the three systems from $1.80, and they really reduced it down to $1 a square foot. They also implemented a sliding scale, but I won't really go into that part. But what's important is they went from $1.80 down to $1 a square foot. But they also implemented a bonus deduction that's tied to that if you still meet the energy efficient requirements and you also meet what we call the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements as well on the project, you can get up to $5 a square foot. Just to kind of sum that up, basically on a project, the laborers and the mechanics on the actual new construction or renovation have to be paid the prevailing wage for the location. That's going to be different depending on what location you're in. Prevailing wages are different in New York versus Houston, Texas. So first, they have to meet the prevailing wage requirements, and then second, there has to be apprentices on the project as well. There's a percentage of time of those laborers and workers that has to be apprenticeship related to qualify for that bonus deduction. So if you do qualify, you get the bonus deduction. If you don't qualify, you still get a deduction. It's just a little bit smaller, not a lot smaller than $5.
Next slide. Tell us about the three areas. Yeah, you guys.
So there's three areas that get you to the tax deductions that we look at within the building. Okay, the first is lighting. The second is HVAC and hot water. And the third is building envelope. And the object here is to make the building envelope reduce the energy consumption by 50%. Okay, when I say building envelope, we're talking about window tint, we're talking about insulation, roofing materials that are energy efficient and everything. Those are the type of things that get us to that deduction. And Brian, do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. So with buildings prior to 2022, each one of those systems were evaluated individually. The lighting had to be 25% energy efficient as compared to ASHRAE standards of 2007. HVAC hot water had to be 15, and building envelope had to be 10. So when you add all those together, you get a 50% energy efficiency for that entire project. If you get over 50%, then you get the full deduction. If you don't, then it reverts back to the individual systems. For 2023 going forward, now what they implemented is a sliding scale of energy efficiency from 25% all the way up to 50. So when you do the same type of calculations and modeling, if you get 50%, you can get the full deduction. But if you don't get the 50%, then it becomes a sliding scale of deduction based on whatever percentage you hit. So real quick summary on that is if you had prior to 2022 and that lighting was only 24% energy efficient and the HVAC was 14, the building envelope was 9, well, all three of those was 47%. And they all three individually didn't meet their minimum requirements. Well, that's still a pretty energy efficient building. What the new laws basically with that sliding scale was you didn't lose that deduction. Now you got 47% of that energy efficiency. So you actually got it pretty close to a full deduction because you're very close to 50%. So that just kind of sums up the changes that now it's a sliding scale where they're all considered, whereas before they were individually considered. And if one didn't make it, then you would actually take a pretty good hit on the deduction.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Okay, we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, how does it work? So I think Brian's already talked about, the difference getting to 50%. We talked about that. I think the ASHRAE standards are important. And Brian, I'm going to toss this back over to you real quick. Do you want to kind of talk about the ASHRAE standards and how it applies to the 2006 to 2023?
Sure. So for buildings that are put in service between 2006 and 2015, we use the ASHRAE standards of 2001. For 2016 going through 2027, we will use the ASHRAE standards of 2007. So what that means is that whenever we're modeling up a building, let's just take a hotel or let's take a storage facility, for example. When we model up a new storage facility, and let's just say it's a brand new facility that was put in service in 2023, we model that up in the IRS software. We use eQuest, and we'll mention that a little bit later, but we model that building up in the IRS software, and then we have to model up another baseline building in the same software, but we use the minimum standards of the ASHRAE for 2007. And what we do is we compare those minimum standards from 2007 to this building that we just modeled up in 2023, and that percentage of energy efficiency from that time frame will give us an amount, and typically it's over 50%. So we usually get the full deduction on new construction buildings. And if you think about it, everything that's new construction nowadays is more energy efficient than what is 16 years ago. So, if we even look back at the ASHRAE standards of 2007, LED lighting isn't even mentioned in there. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how, I would say outdated the ASHRAE standards are, but it is what we have to go off of. But starting in 2027, we move up to the ASHRAE standards of 2019. So things will get a little bit more, I don't want to say difficult to qualify, but there'll be more energy efficient requirements to meet. But that's kind of how we model a baseline building in the software versus the actual building that we're looking at.
Thank you. Go to the next slide, please. We've already talked about this a little bit earlier on about who can claim the incentive. And like we said, with the Inflation Act, recently it allowed us to take those tax deductions and transfer them to the designers. But again, basically the business owner gets the deduction of the tax savings. REITs can apply for 179D deductions and use those applied against the earnings and profits. And then again, about the nonprofits we've already discussed. So
and I would add on the nonprofits, there's a lot of contractors that are in the self-storage space. If you're doing other asset classes like a governmental building or something like that, you can benefit from that, and it's kind of a freebie from the IRS. So generally speaking, when you do cost segregation and you do 179D, when you sell that property, you have to pay that deduction back in the form of recapture. In this situation, if you're a contractor for a government-owned building and you do that, you never have recapture. So it's kind of a freebie. Broussard and I just kind of worked that through with a couple of CPAs, and it's something we didn't realize. The IRS doesn't do that often, and this is one example where you can. So if you're a contractor, let us know, and we'll be happy to kind of walk you through some of the benefits, and you can introduce us to your clients.
Thank you, Warren. We'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so 179D, what types of buildings qualify for this? Brian Broussard's touched on it a little bit. New construction definitely qualifies. Renovation projects definitely qualify. And then, hey, Brian, you want to expand a little bit on a renovation? What would specifically apply for that?
Sure. So whenever you purchase a building, if you're familiar with cost seg, you purchase a building, you can take cost segregation right away without doing anything to the project. But for 179D, and if you purchase an existing building, in order to claim the deduction, you actually have to do some type of energy efficient renovations on the project. So whether you replace the lighting, HVAC chillers, or doing some envelope work with I guess different what's the word I'm looking for? I had a lapse there. Insulation. Thank you. Sorry, insulation. If you're gutting the building and put new insulation in, those are the types of things we look at. Now, the one thing you have to consider though is that the deduction on a renovation can be limited by the amount you spent on that renovation. So, for example, this is a deduction that's based on square footage. So, if you have a 100,000 square foot property and you qualify, let's just say for 2022, you qualify for the full $1.80 deduction, it's a $180,000 deduction. But the renovations that you did on that project of changing out the lighting and some other things, maybe you only spent $100,000. So even though you qualify for the $180,000, you'd only actually be able to claim 100 because that's all you spent. And what's that there is there for? It's basically to prevent people from, changing a few light bulbs and then try to take this deduction if they really didn't do the energy efficient renovations to that project.
Perfect. Thank you. One of the things that we have found is that anything less than 40,000 square feet is not really a good candidate for 179D, and we'll touch on that a little bit later on, but just as a limitation and everything. And Brian, certain types of buildings that wouldn't qualify for 179D?
Sure. So keep in mind, 179D is a commercial building tax deduction. So commercial properties, those are ones that we're looking at, but for ones that don't qualify would be residential properties. Apartments that are 4 stories and taller can qualify. Those do fall under 179D, but if they are 3 stories and lower, they would not fall under 179D. They fall under a different type of tax benefit, and those would not qualify.
Right. And as Brian pointed out to me recently, I was doing a bunch of work in the senior care market, and senior care facilities are the same qualification as an apartment, as a family dwelling and everything. So they have to be 4 stories or taller to qualify. So yeah, thank you, Brian. Okay, next slide, please. 179D, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, so I think we'll skip over this one. We hit on this a little bit, and going back, buildings placed in service between 2006 and 22. Again, commercial buildings. So here's interesting. So the ASH rate, so buildings that were put into service between 2006 and 2015, you use the ASH rate standard of 2001, okay, which to me is mind-boggling because it's already, I mean, you're guaranteed, you're almost guaranteed. I mean, there's no guarantees in life, right? But you're guaranteed that you're going to hit the savings on it because they're using standards from 7 to 14 years ago, okay? Then if you look at the new buildings from 2016 to 2026, they went to 2007, so there's a ton of opportunity, especially in the self-storage industry, to qualify for the max deductions.
Pretty much when you build a new self-storage facility now, it's going to qualify. So the cool thing is you can do a cost seg and you're accelerating all of your 5 and 15-year assets. And then the 179D allows you to accelerate some of the 39-year assets. So it's a pretty cool thing. It's really maximizing what you can pull out of your building.
Thank you, Warren. Okay, we'll go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is one of your favorite slides here, Brian. Why don't you talk about the new construction? So this is an example, okay, of 179D and how it applied. So I'll let you talk through this one.
Sure. So again, I'll just try not to read it word for word, but this is an example of a storage facility that we did that the CPA asked us to do a 179D study for. They'd already done a cost seg. We reviewed the project and looked at the drawings. Again, it was a new construction. And just based on a review of the drawings, my engineers and modelers are pretty good about being able to determine if there's going to be any issues with meeting that full deduction. They determined no, there wasn't going to be any issues. So we did the study, we modeled it out. It did receive the full deduction. And keeping in mind that this building was put in service in 2020, you don't have to amend for this. You can actually do this similar to cost seg on a prior year building. You can take it on a current return through a 3115 form. So in this case, they named their baby after us.
Perfect. Thank you.
And so I'll just touch on that. The 3115, both for a cost seg study or a 179D study, the 3115 allows you to go back and apply this kind of from a prior year to your current tax return. And when you use that form, you don't have to do any amendments. So some people would say, oh, hey, I don't want to do this because I have to amend my tax return. The 3115 is a form that the IRS puts in place that just says, so you don't have to mess with all this, you can file it on your current tax return and get the benefit today. It's pretty cool.
Thank you, Warren. So I'm looking at the chats. Either we're doing a heck of a job or putting everybody to sleep. So I'm not sure which one it is, but I appreciate any questions you all might have and everything. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay. Again, same situation. When it's just a renovation. Again, renovated in 2020. This right here, what we did is we went and kind of had and put a limitation on that deduction. So you can see that it was upgraded with lighting in the HVAC, and with this 200,000 square foot building, the max deduction they could receive at $1.80 would have been what, 360,000. So that's the max deduction they would get, but they only spent $250,000 on that renovation. So even though they exceeded that 50% threshold that we were shooting for, and the full deduction was met at 360,000. They were only able to claim a $250,000 deduction because, again, they didn't spend enough on that renovation to get the full deduction. With new construction buildings, you're never going to have that issue because the new construction is always going to be more expensive than what the deduction would be.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's skip ahead a couple slides and get into the process because these are more examples of construction. So we've talked about who qualifies, how do you get it, what the study's based upon. We're going to get into the process now, okay, and the steps that we take in order to complete the studies. Step one is the estimation, okay? And if you go to the next slide, we'll kind of bounce around a little bit here, okay? So what we need to do is we have to gather all the construction drawings, the mechanical, the architectural design, plumbing, and we take a look at all those assets or all those drawings to help us start the process of understanding if it's going to be a good candidate for 179D. Okay, so that's the first and probably the most important thing that we need to get up front. Okay, and what we do during this process is we get the basic information, okay, and then we can tell you if what your building is going to be a good candidate for 179D, and we'll touch a little bit on that towards the end here. So let's toggle back to the previous slide, if you would. So the next is modeling, okay? So if you bounce down a couple, there you go. We have software, so once we get the drawings and everything, we then start the modeling, okay? And Brian, why don't you hit on the modeling process a little bit for us and kind of give us some details on that.
Sure. So the IRS actually has a list of approved software. Anybody can look it up. We use a modeling system or modeling software called eQuest, and it's one of the more popular ones out there. But basically, we take those drawings and we actually have to model it up in the IRS approved software. We can't, use AutoCAD or Revit or any of those other types of software that architects and engineers use for designing and drawing up projects. So we take all that information from the blueprints and from the construction documents, and we basically redraw the buildings up in the eQuest software, and we enter all the information in the software, and it will compare that to a base building. I call it base building / ghost building, but we draw another building up in the same software with the ASHRAE standards, depending on what year that's put in service. And we compare the two, and that energy efficiency is how we ultimately get to that percentage that we're trying to get, that 50%.
Perfect. Thank you. Just let's bounce back up, or Iris, let's bounce back up to it. Okay. Step 3. Okay. Site inspection. Okay. This is mandatory in 179D process, just like it is in cost segregation. Okay. The site inspection must be done by a licensed engineer in the state. Okay. And what they do is they verify all the things that are on the drawings. And as you can see from the picture here, we'll take pictures of the serial plates on the air conditioning, everything. And then we go back and we grab that information off of there, and it goes all into the modeling process and everything. But the site inspection is really important to this process, and is probably the biggest cost in it, because we have to send a licensed engineer to the site to get all this information. And Brian, you've got ton of information on this, and kind of talk about that if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So our licensed engineer, it's got to be a PE. Well, actually, you can be a licensed contractor in the state as well, but we use a PE, and our PE is licensed, I think, in 39 states right now. He's not licensed in Hawaii because we don't have any products over there. So if you guys have any storage facilities over there, we'll move you up to the front of the line because he really wants to go. Yeah, so the process is once we're done with the modeling, the licensed engineer will go on site. He'll do his inspection. He'll take readings from the lighting systems. He'll verify the HVAC, hot water systems, as well as the envelope. And what he'll do is he'll relay that information back to the modeler to make sure that what the modeler drew off those plans that were provided are what was actually installed in the field. And if it's not, if there's some differences, then we actually have to make the adjustments to the model to make sure that that model is still in compliance with what is in the field. So that's the whole point of the site inspections. We model it up based on the drawings that we're given, and then we go on site, inspect, verify, take readings. And if there are any differences, then we have to make those changes to the modeling and the study.
Thank you. Let's go back up to our little pyramid there. Next is step 4, which is the allocation letter. And that's the government only. Brian, you want to touch on that real quick?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, there are 2 people who can take the 179D deduction. One is commercial building owners, like most people here. And the second one would be designers of non-tax-paying entities. So your government buildings, your nonprofits, and your churches. And so since those nonprofits and government buildings are non-tax-paying entities, they can allocate that deduction to the designer of the technical drawings associated with that project, which are typically going to be your architects, engineers. However, contractors can get the deduction allocated if they have a design input in those drawings, or perhaps are a design build company that was instrumental in some of the energy efficiency design. So this is a first come, first serve, and it really is simply as the architect, engineer, or contractor asking the government entity for this deduction. And so what happens is they have to fill out an allocation letter. It's a 1-page letter. It's pretty templated, pretty standard letter. And it just basically says we at ABC government entity allocate this deduction to DEF engineering firm for their design energy efficiency design work on this project, and that allows for the taxpayer to take that deduction. Now, the main difference between this and commercial building is we mentioned from 2006 to current with the 3115, you can take this deduction on a current return. For designers that are involved in government-related buildings, there is a 3-year statute of limitations, just like any other taxpayer. So that is the main difference. They can only go back 3 years and claim that deduction, and they do have to amend, whereas the building owners do not.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the final step is just the final report and certification letter. It comes in a packet that we provide to you, and you give that to your CPA, and off you go. So it's a pretty involved process from start to finish. And like I said, we can actually tell you if your building is a good candidate for 179D with just getting some simple questions answered. And we can kind of say, yeah, it's a go forward. Let's move forward with these projects. So anybody have any questions on the process at all? Perfect.
Yeah, audience, if you have some questions, ask those now. We did put another poll question out there. Poll question number 3, if you could answer that one for us, is would you like more information about having a cost segregation study done on your property, or even one of these 179D studies? You can just put in there yes to both or yes to one or the other and let us know, and we'll get the team over at CSSI to get in touch with you. Oh, actually, here we go. We've got a question from Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. Andrew's asking, how is cost determined for a cost segregation study?
Brian, would you jump on that one?
He's asking for a cost segregation study or a 179D study?
For cost segregation, for either of them, your basis is determined not on an appraisal or anything like that, but based on the purchase price. So, for example,
is he talking about cost basis, or is he talking about what do we charge for a study and how do we determine that?
Oh, well, there you go. Well, let's do basis first. So you buy $1 million building, you have to peel off land, and then you can do a cost seg study on the remainder of that. If you're asking about what the fee is for both 179D, there you go, your services, or cost seg, it's determined on a building by building basis. If we do a $500,000 building for cost seg study versus an $8 million self-storage, the more expensive one, the fee is going to be a little bit more expensive. And And 179D is a little more expensive than a cost seg study in general, because it's the engineer actually has to go on site and check that out. But the cool thing that we do both for 179D and cost seg is that we run an estimate that provides, here's what we think we're going to save you, and here's the fee to get it done. So you can see that long before you actually have to pull the trigger and do anything.
And ours is typically based on the square footage of the project, again, because we do have to mull it up. So, a cost for a 50,000 square foot building is going to be less than what a 500,000 square foot building would be. So it's really based on square footage.
Right. Andrew, did that answer your question, hopefully? I'll wait for you to put that in there. Just if you move down to slide 21. So we're going to take a look at a cost seg study that we did for a self-storage industry, or a self-storage building. And Brian, you want to work on this one?
179D. So again, this is another case study for 179D. Actually, this is more specifics on one that we actually did. So the information there, you can see it's about a 352,000 square foot building. It was brand new, and it actually started in 2022 and finished in 2023. The energy efficiency savings on there was above the 50%, so we were able to qualify for the full deduction. The deduction was $536 a square foot, and we took that $536 a square foot, times that by the 352,000 square feet, and we got a deduction of almost 1.9 million. Now, this is a special case. You heard me talk earlier about projects that started and finished, prior to 2022, and then the new law change where you can get that bonus deduction. You'll see that the bonus deduction is applied here, but in this case, they actually didn't meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. And the reason why is because there is a sweet spot for projects that started prior to when the law went into effect and then finished after the law went into effect. And so what the IRS allows for you to do is, since you started that project before the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements were set, but it finished when the new law was in place, you get to get that larger deduction without having to meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. So in this case, it started in 2022 and the law went into effect in 2023, and that's when they finished. So they were able to kind of get in that sweet spot where they didn't have to meet the requirements for the bonus deduction, but still get the bonus deduction.
Beautiful. Thank you. So the max is $5, but I see here we got $5.36 a square foot.
All right. So that's adjusted for inflation for 2023. It's put in service in 2023. $5 is what the law states, and that's what's in the code. But every year they adjust for inflation. And I think everyone understands that with inflation these days, we need the extra money. So $5.36 for projects put in service in 2023. And if you don't meet the deduction, if you don't meet the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, and the project did start in 2023, it'd actually be $1.07 and not really $1 square foot. For 2024, it's up to $5.65 and $1.15 deductions based on inflation.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's jump down to slide 26, kind of go through the process if anybody is interested in doing a 179D study. First thing you need to do is contact Brian or Warren, okay? And our contact information is on the document here, and we'll go out to everybody when we do that. What we will do is we'll get information, a series of questions asked. We've got a form that you'll fill out. They gave us construction, year it was constructed, some different questions on there. It's a one-page form. And you submit that to us. It'll take us about a week, and we'll come back and give you kind of an expected tax savings and a fee for what that would cost. Okay, that's the same process as Warren described for cost segregation, but these questions are more aimed specifically at the energy efficiencies of the building itself. So very simple. It takes a couple of days to turn it around. Again, you're going to see what the estimated tax savings would be for you. And then the other thing is you're going to get is what the fee would be for us as well.
And I want everybody to keep in mind, that when we mention energy efficiency a lot here, when we say energy efficiency, we're not looking for buildings to be LEED certified or have, just basically completely sustainable buildings, grass roofs, green roofs, whatever. It's not, that type of energy efficiency. What we're looking at is we're looking at buildings and we're comparing them to a baseline that's, 14 years ago. So again, don't think just because you haven't, put all the newest and latest and greatest stuff in there. If you built your storage facility from the ground up and it was 2018, we're still going to be able to look at that and potentially qualify that from a full deduction standpoint, because again, we're going off the ASHRAE standards of 2007. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be LEED or sustainable building or anything like that. Let us look at the drawings. Just between everyone here, every new construction project I've done has gotten full deduction. It's because that everyone whenever they put in a new project, they're always putting in the new new lighting, new HVAC systems, and we're going off stuff that's the minimum standards from over a decade plus ago. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Jessica, that's all we got. We do have a couple slides on cost segregation if you want us to go down that path.
Yeah, you might as well while we still have some time so the audience can understand that process as well in the event that they don't.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you. Let's jump down to slide 28. And Warren, I'm going to let you talk about cost segregation.
Oh, I was off mute. Sorry. Yeah. So cost segregation is basically the IRS allows you to depreciate a building two ways. Take $1 million building, you can depreciate it straight line over 39 years. So you'd get 1/39 of that $1 million. By doing a cost seg study, it's another legitimate way to depreciate your building. You can take, in the self-storage world, probably 30 to 40% of that building as a deduction now. So how does that benefit me? If I don't have to pay taxes to my state and the IRS, then that's cash flow that I can use to buy a new property or to make an improvement or any of those things. Next slide. So what we do is we take the building and you could say it was in kind of one bucket. We break it out into multiple buckets. Go to the next slide. And so you can see some of the things that we're breaking out in the self-storage world: interior doors, hallway partitions, security systems, specialty electrical. There's a self-storage here in Louisiana that I did a cost segregation study for, and he had a wine locker. So, one portion of his self-storage was all refrigerated, and that was, something you can accelerate. On the 15-year items, it's anything outside, like your parking lot and your concrete or your lighting and your flags. Anytime you have an existing facility and you do an interior improvement, everything you put in there qualifies for what's called QIP, Qualified Improvement Property. So great example of that is Brian's lighting projects that he does. So when you build a building or buy a building, the lights in that building are a 39-year asset. You own it 10 years and you say, hey, I've got to put new lights in, and you throw those old lights in the trash. So you get to write off 29 years of value on those lights. And then the new lights going in, because they qualify for QIP, they also qualify for bonus depreciation. So you get another good chunk of that. So anything interior that's non-structural, it doesn't apply to an elevator or an escalator or a structural item, but hallway skins, doors, lighting, all kinds of stuff that you would do on the interior of a self-storage facility. So what we're doing is we're breaking it out into parts and pieces. The IRS says you can accelerate those faster. Normally it's over a 5 and 15-year time frame. The IRS has allowed us to have bonus depreciation in play, and that allows you to depreciate it even faster. The next slide. And in addition to cost seg, I mentioned the lights getting torn out. Anytime you're doing a renovation on a property, it could be exterior too. You're tearing out concrete. You're doing fencing. You're doing your roof. All those could qualify for a partial asset disposition. There's some exceptions, but for the most part, we have CPAs that will tell us, hey, I don't want to mess with figuring out what's QIP, what's qualified improvement property. Will y'all do that for me? I did an auto dealership in Houma, Louisiana, and the CPA said, we're doing so much work, I don't want to figure out what's QIP. So you do a cost seg study, define that for me, and the client had a great big benefit. we're really specialists both in Section 179 and bonus depreciation. Section 179 is a little different than the 179D we just talked about. Section 179 would apply to equipment or your temporary buildings that you're putting out there. But actually, after seeing this should say Section 179D anyway. Brian on our team now allows us to do 179 and R&D. The last show I was at, one of my prior customers had done a cost segregation study on his self-storage facility, but he said he owned a steak company. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like Omaha Steaks? He said, no, wooden steaks. And so he was developing machinery so that the wood would drop by gravity and they could package it that way. And I was like, oh, well, you probably qualify for R&D as well. So this is another one. And then we'll mention it. We also do what's called green zip tape if you're doing new construction and it involves sheetrock, particularly a lot of sheetrock. Green zip tape allows your wall to be a 5-year. It's considered movable now, and it makes it a 5-year asset, and you can accelerate it. So we've got 3 or 4 projects in process right now. Yesterday we had some green zip tape delivered to a project that Brian Lyles is in charge of. So it's a big urgent care center that's going up, and
Hospital.
Hospital. So all kinds of great stuff we offer. That's kind of who CSSI is. You've heard both the 179D and the cost seg, and we'd love to work with you guys. And that is all for me.
Brian, you got anything else to add?
If I had tennis balls, I'd juggle for you.
Done it then.
Listen, and I just want to say, like, this is an important topic. While it's maybe like confusing for some or cumbersome for some to get through, I would highly recommend you reach out to the team at CSSI. We get this on the insurance side. Sometimes people glaze over when we start to talk insurance because it's not the most sexy topic out there. We know that. However, it's an important topic like this one. Like I said earlier in the call, and I'm not making fictitious numbers. Like we saved millions by working with CSSI and cost segregation studies when we had a large portfolio. Even if you don't have a large portfolio and you have one location, why wouldn't you want to save money in today's economy? We are in an economic downturn. I would try to save every single solitary dollar I could as a business owner, whether I'm in self-storage or a different sector. So again, thank you guys for attending. Thank you guys for putting this on for us today. We know this information is important, and we want to get this information out to other self-storage owners and operators so they can take advantage of some of these different tax savings. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you go through this process?
And really what it does is it frees up cash flow so that you can use it for something else. I've got storage owners that tell me they do cost seg on the first 2 cost segs, and it gives them enough cash flow to buy a third one, and that's kind of how they do it. And they'll do a cost seg on the third one as well. And
or
adds to that. Yeah. Hey, and we've probably surpassed $1 million in savings on the new portfolio for you too, as well, Jessica.
Have you? Yes, I'm not. I haven't seen those yet. So I know I said thousands or tens of thousands. So my number was way off. Sorry about that. I've not been intimately involved in that process. So I'm glad to hear you saved millions for us over on that new side too. And that it's significant, guys. I mean, this is something that you all should be looking into if you care about and want to take your business seriously. And this team is very seasoned and can help you tremendously on figuring this out. So definitely take a look into this. It's an important topic and one that we fully believe in over at the SBOA because we have, saved money by doing this. So
so if you're buying a property, cost seg. If you're building a property, 179D and cost seg. We'd love to help you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again so much for being here, guys. I have a few closing comments for the audience before I let you guys go. Next Self-Storage Unlocked is going to be on Thursday, July 25th. Like I said, it's always on a Thursday. Usually on a Thursday. We've been pretty consistent with Thursdays. It'll be from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next topic is with our partners over at MSI, and it's talking about how you can enhance the customer experience and how AI is transforming call reviews. So we have a new system that we're using with our data provider that we have partnered with that can actually, it's AI technology. It can listen to your calls, extrapolate data from the calls, and give you an entire training video on what your team did, good, bad, or indifferent, based on the results of the calls. So a lot of you out there are probably manually monitoring calls or have some sort of system that you're using to monitor your calls to make sure that your team is giving out the appropriate information to current and potential tenants. We are taking that out of your workload for you. AI is going to drive all of that for you if you are interested in this system. So it's going to be a really good one. I'm really excited for this one coming up. Again, that's Thursday, July 25th. Iris put the link in the chat where you can go onto Eventbrite and register for that webinar. It is another free webinar. We've gone back to free webinars. So please make sure you check that out. And again, check out the rest of the schedule that we have lined up for Q3. We have 2 in July, 2 in August, and 2 in September. Trade show season is about to be coming up as we conclude summer here in the next couple weeks. But just to let some of you know, the California Self-Storage Association's Owners Summit is next week in Newport Beach. I will be out there with our insurance team. So if you guys are in the state of California and attending that event, that is starts next Thursday, July 18th. Also, an important event, if you are in the state of Florida like I am the president of the Florida Self-Storage Association. So please join the Florida Self-Storage Association if you are not a current member. We have our Lunch and Learn next Wednesday in Orlando at Maggiano's Little Italy. All of the information is on the Florida Self-Storage Association website for that event or on social media, as well as the California event. You can go to the CSSA website to get information on attending when we're in Balboa next week. And as of the other day, there were only 14 spots left, and I think we took 2 of them, so they may be down to about a dozen or probably less than that by now. So if you're interested in the California event, I would act today because that event is probably going to be sold out here shortly. And I believe the California event, the keynote speaker, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize if I say this incorrectly, but the creator of the Oculus is the keynote speaker. So that's going to be pretty cool there. It's a great networking event. Hope you can attend. And that is it for us. Stay tuned to our newsletter. It's got tons of information. If you have not subscribed to our newsletter, you can go to the SBOA.com and figure out how to do that from there. We'll see you guys back in 2 weeks for another Self-Storage Unlocked episode. Thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.